5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You're listening to Tabletop and Beyond with your host, Justin.
But before we get started, how was your geek week?
And co-hosts Dan and Jason.
You have to be willing to let the dice help you tell the story.
Okay, look, this year I'm going to stop mispronouncing words. Join us as we cover board games to war games and beyond.
Okay, welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. This is our Talkin' Warhammer segment. This is episode number 2. I am your host, Justin, and I'm here with two great guests, Sergio Ortiz and Lincoln Tidwell. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you.
Let's introduce our guests a little bit. Sergio, you are a competitive player. We started playing against each other several years ago. You were at my first tournament that I ever played at, and I barely lost to you thanks to that stupid Guardian of Souls with the lantern.
I remember
prevented
a little differently, but
yeah, that prevented my charges from getting in there. But we had we've had some great games over the years against each other. And let's see, you competed in the ITC last season. How did you do last season?
I finished 13th, so I had a good finish. I wanted to
That's a great
end top
finish,
10.
buddy.
Yeah, I wanted to end top 10, but just shy of that. But yeah, just more goals for this coming season, right?
And if I'm not mistaken, did you get best IDK?
I did.
Idoneth Deepkin?
I did. Not a lot of people were competing, so it was a little bit of a shoe-in. But hey, I'll take the trophies where I can get them.
It's well deserved, my friend. Like, there's a reason that I think a lot of people aren't playing Idoneth Deepkin right now, and we'll get into that when we do a little bit of deep dive into the army. But I don't think it's the easiest army to play for a beginner. You know, not like a Stormcast, and so that's probably why the field wasn't too deep. But the fact that you got 13th in the ITC circuit for the last season, I think is very admirable. How'd you do at LVO?
I ended 22nd, so with a 4-1 record, so it was good.
That's awesome. Did you go 4 and then 1, or did you go, how was your win-loss breakdown?
I lost my third game on the first day, and
Okay.
It was to the Phoenician player who ended up going 6-1, I believe. Yeah, he won his first game in the top 8, so I lost to a good player.
Awesome. Okay, well, yeah, that sounds great. Lincoln, you are also a pretty competitive player. You tend to play a lot of tournaments around here in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, though, right?
Yep. I try to do, every year I try to do Adepticon, that's in Chicago, and then I sometimes do Nova begrudgingly, because I think the price support is terrible. But other than that, the people there are great, right? The runners are great, and the people that play are great. And then we usually do the American Team Championship, where me and a handful of friends go down. And it's usually, I think, in Tennessee. I
was going to say, isn't it Nashville or something like that?
Yep, it's great. We've actually won that every year, I think, except for one. So we've done pretty good as a team. And then I try to play at my local GTs when I can. I don't play it. I'm not the guy who can play enough to try to be like number 1 in the ITC. But I'm going to be that guy that's going to try to ruin your record. So watch out.
Lincoln is definitely a spoiler. And we're going to talk about list building today. And I'm glad that Lincoln's on here because, Lincoln, you find some pretty creative lists that people are not ready for. They're
sure.
definitely not the meta list. And that's one of the things that I definitely want to dive into today because those are the kind of lists that will wreck your big tournament.
Right. My favorite thing is to take something that everybody says is terrible and then beat them with it. That's my favorite thing to do. Absolutely.
Very good. So, before we get really started, Sergio, are you working on anything? What's on your hobby table, buddy?
Absolutely nothing right now.
Nice.
I rushed. So I've been working on the Idoneth army. That's the one army that I played this whole past season.
Yeah.
And I got it to a 3-color minimum standard, and by 3-color I mean 3 base coats of
nice.
And I played that. It got me through every tournament, but for LVO I was like, they they have a rubric, so I'll add some shades to it and whatnot. So I rushed the paint job on the month before LVO, and then since then I just been chilling on hobby.
Nice. So I know that the last Nova Open, like I like killed myself that week before trying to get all of my chain rasps and everything painted up, and like because I was still tinkering with my list up until like maybe a week before the tournament when you had to turn in your list.
Yeah.
And so like I ended up like just crunching like every night up to like 1 or 2 in the morning, like painting like the new units that I was adding to my thing. And I remember like between that and playing like 11 different matches at Nova Open, because I played the doubles, I played the RTT, I played the grand tournament, when I got done that week, I'm like, I'm done. And I don't think I touched a Warhammer model for like 2 months. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, I just didn't play because I'm like, I've got to take a break. I didn't paint,
No,
I didn't
I definitely get it. I definitely get that. That's kind of where I'm at right now. But
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's at the Army's at a good spot where if I start adding highlights and stuff, I can push it to a high level. So I've been thinking about it, but that's where I'm at, thinking about it.
All right, very good. What about you, Lincoln? What you working on?
So I've always wanted a Blood Knight army, so I started Soul Blight. I guess it's probably about 2 months ago, and it's taken me 2 months to get everything built. And then I've got my Prime on about 90% of the models with some Zenithal highlights, and then I started base coating my Blood Knights just recently. So I've got a pretty unconventional Blood Knight list, which I think is pretty great, and I think they're awesome. I don't know, they're definitely not S tier, right? But you can have a lot of fun with them, and I don't want to play hordes. So all you guys moving 200 models around the table, knock yourself out, right?
Are you kind of glad? Are you kind of glad that AOS 3.0 has kind of gotten away from hordes? I mean, like there's still some armies that can put some out there, like the zombie army and stuff like that. But for the most
when
part,
I came out of my mother's womb, I said MSU, literally on my way out, because that is definitely my preferred play style.
Awesome. I've been just crashing on a ton of Warcry stuff. So I'm painting up like I don't know if you guys saw the Red Harvest box that came out with the terrain that had like the mill and kind of like the people call it the bobsled chute, but it's really like a sluice of like metal stuff that's coming out. So I've been painting up that terrain for it, and it's looking pretty awesome. It's really cool because it's like very multi-layered, which is awesome in skirmish games. So doing that, but then as I paint this, right, like it gets really tedious at times, and so I'm looking at the other models I have built and primed, and I'm like, I wonder what color scheme would look on that, and so it's totally like that meme with the dude looking at the girl with his girlfriend on the other side, where it's like, Warcry terrain's my girlfriend, and I'm looking at like other models like, I wonder what color scheme I should do with that one. So I just need to finish the one I got. I just got to finish it out. So it's pretty good. So so let's talk, guys. Let's talk Idoneth Deepkin. So Idoneth Deepkin is a water elf army who has no souls. Is that basically the best like summary of their lore?
So they were created by Teclis.
Yep.
Right. Thrown away, and I think sort of saved by Slanesh. Is that right, Sergio? I think something to that effect.
Yeah, they were flawed, and so Teclis threw them away. So they just retreated to the depths of the oceans to get away from Teclis's wrath, basically. Right. And they got no souls, and so they just go around raiding whatever coastal settlements for souls and slaves. They're slave drivers.
Nice. Okay. They played a huge part in the Broken Realms books, right? Especially like the Marathi books. There was like a big war that was going on with some of Marathi's forces, and they were trying to stop her, and she was trying to steal their I think that she, or they attacked the Daughters of Cain attacked an Idoneth Deepkin stronghold to steal their lantern that gathered souls, right? And that allowed her to get the soul energy she needed to ascend to godhood. So they were kind of featured up in front in the sort of the breaking of the 2.0, AOS 2.0 lore stuff, and moved it into the AOS 3.0, which they ended up getting some interesting rules updates during that time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they got some excellent updates actually.
Really, really good.
Yeah, the Eidolons both got updated. The Storm one in particular became like a linchpin of the army. Lincoln definitely knows about the shark updates. I mean, I remember specifically that the boys 2019, I think, was when I drove up with you guys.
Yeah.
And on the ride home, the boys is like a 7-hour drive, and so on the ride home, it's just me and Lincoln because I think we dropped off everybody else. I'm a horrible passenger because I would just fall asleep no matter what. And so Lincoln's just talking my head off, and I can't fall asleep. And Lincoln's just talking about sharks. These sharks are going to be great. No one has seen these sharks coming. And so I knew that Lincoln had lots of sharks. And so this update came around, and sure enough, you were the first person I saw to pull out that all shark list. That was, I mean, actually, it's a great list.
It's a really good list.
So what was the update to the sharks?
So they changed their shooting. They gave them more shooting, and they took away one of their combat profiles and gave them more rend on their other profiles. So their points went up a little bit. So the initial list they had 11 sharks in it, which is just crazy, right? It's so much fun because the key with Deepkin, right, is you can only shoot the closest Deepkin unit to the unit that's shooting.
Right.
So I could throw one sacrificial shark out in front of like Marathi and the bow snakes, and they have to kill that shark with all their shots, right? And then the rest of the army, I've got 10 sharks on Marathi and the bow snakes, just shooting the crap out of them. And it's actually a pretty easy win for Deepkin, which is Marathi and the bow snakes, as an example, is a pretty hard army to deal with traditionally, but with Deepkin and Deepkin shooting, it's really not too bad. And now, so I went from 11 to 9 after the update, and the sharks were better. And now I'm going from 9 to 7, right, for the points, because the points just keep going up and up and up. But the rumor, right, I guess not rumor, but there's a way you can take them as battle lines. So you may see an all shark and a character army. We'll see. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to go with the 3.0 update. But sharks are strong. I think that they always have been really strong, and especially when they were 100 points, very underutilized in the meta. But now everybody knows about them because they're making them even better, but they're definitely paying for it. They're a lot more expensive points-wise. So.
Yeah, the 2.0 meta was very focused on the eels, right? You saw a lot of eels spam just because they had the, the shock ability that could do the D3 mortal wounds per model, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
So
Unrendable, right? Unrendable, and the charging with +3 to your charge coming off the board edge. And you could stack it. Lots of things that you could do. Eels were definitely the way people play Deepkin in 2.0. And then, but Sergio, you were playing them in 2.0, right? With your Reavers too, right?
No, the very first tournament I did for 2.0 was the Atlantic City Open, which was the first tournament post-COVID that we were allowed to do. Right. And I ran, I think, 18 eels. I ran an all-eel list, basically. It was my first foray into it, and I ran an all-eel list in that. And then I ran an all-eel list again for Summer Slaughter, and quickly realized that was not the way to go anymore.
So what changed? I mean, like, what really changed with like the all-eel list? Because I mean, that thing was like people were terrified of that list.
The price of the attack eels went up.
Okay.
Well, everything went up in 3.0, right?
Yeah.
But the attack eels in particular went up way too much, and then people started figuring out, on top of that, they had -2 rend, which was really strong in 2.0, but with save stacking in 3.0, that -2 rend basically it felt like -1 rend, and it just wasn't as powerful anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So they just couldn't punch the way they used to punch, and they were they were priced as, heavy cav, and so you just had to find other ways to other units to get what you needed out of the army.
Do you feel like the price of the eels is about right, or do you think they're too expensive right now?
I think they're too expensive right now.
Yeah. I think 195 is too much. I think 175 would be okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
Yep.
And that's 175 for a unit of 3, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
195 is just too much.
Yeah, fair
I
enough.
mean, you have what, 2 dragons for 340,
Right.
and so you can't even reinforce the eels. You know, like I don't know, it's just not worth the points right now.
So what about some of the battle line stuff? I know, Sergio, you're running a bunch of Reavers and Thralls, or just one or the other. I can't remember.
So basically, after Summer Slaughter, Nate Trentinelli was actually the first one who brought up the idea of Reavers. And at first, I kind of laughed off the idea because it was it was like Cunning Ruck in 1.0, if you guys remember that, with the Bone Splitters just shooting tons and tons. You get lots of 1 damage shots, basically.
Right.
And so I didn't think it would work. I tried out a block of 30 at one tournament, and it worked great. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll turn a block of 30 into 50 of them, and we'll see how that goes. And then the final iteration of the list became I wanted to fit 30 Reavers and 4 Sharks because the Sharks were also, they were just too good, bang for your buck. And eventually, you could just, with Deepkin, you could fit a lot of -2 rend, a lot of weight of dice, and quality damage as well. So you could do a little bit of everything.
So what I want to get into some of the combos that you guys are discovering with Idoneth Deepkin, but like let me back it up a little bit. Like, what kind of an army is Idoneth Deepkin, would you say? Is it like is it a horde army? Is it an elite army? Is it a shooty one? Is it a tanky one? I mean, like for example, Nurgle is like a tanky like tar pit army, you know. Yeah. And I would say like a Night Haunt, for example, is a semi tar pit because of their lack of rend, but they're very maneuverable army. So like what kind of army is Idoneth Deepkin play as?
You're up, Serge.
I gotta say, I mean, me and Lincoln's List played really differently, but it's a hit and run army.
Okay.
They can put out a lot of damage at one time, especially with the always strikes first round that Deep can get.
Yeah.
Which is a holdover from, what is that, 1.0, 2.0, something like that?
Yeah, 2.0, I think, right?
They don't take a hit. They're a glass cannon for sure, but with shooting armies only being able to shoot one unit with one of their units, you neuter shooting armies altogether. You're super fast, and you can put out a lot of damage. So it's definitely a finesse army. You can't get hit back. That's how I would describe it.
Yep, I think it is an army. So there's not a lot of armies out there that are good at both melee and shooting. Okay. Yeah. And I think that Deepkin has the ability to be exceptionally good at melee, but they cannot take a hit back, right? So kind of like, I would say it's very similar to how Korn actually plays right now, which is pretty terrible, right? Unless they hit you first, right?
Right.
So if you're going to play a combat-oriented Deepkin army, unless it's the always strikes first round, you really don't want more than one combat at a time, right? Because once I hit you, I can't afford for you to hit another unit of mine that made a second charge, because chances are there's going to be nothing left for them to swing when it's their turn to go. They're all going to be dead.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Right? So because of that, you can hit really hard, but eels can still charge in. Boom, right? They can still do good damage. The turtle can do good damage. You've got the Eidolons, they can do good damage, right? Thralls can do amazing damage if they do it right. But you have to really control your charges. And so that's hard to do, right? So I would say they are currently, I think they are a better shooting army than they are a combat army. But I do think that you can play them combat. You just have to be very conservative in the way you play them when the turn isn't to your advantage.
Which is really funny because, like, if anyone had played 2.0, the idea of them being a shooting army is kind of hilarious. Right? Because it's like the eels, like, weren't really the shooty units of the army.
Right.
Right? So
no shooting.
Yeah, no shooting.
No shooting.
But you would run like those monster eel lists, and so you didn't have the shooting from the foot the reavers, right? It's the reavers that shoot,
Yep.
right?
It is, yep.
And
Yep.
you weren't shooting from sharks because nobody was running a shark. I mean, if you brought a shark to a thing, people would kind of laugh at you.
Right.
You're like,
Yeah,
okay,
100%.
dude.
Right.
You know. So I think it's interesting because it is a finesse army. If you were starting out, would you recommend this army to like a brand new player?
Personally, I wouldn't.
Yeah. I would
'Cause
say
it-
if they're okay losing, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
this sounds terrible, right? But I pride myself on being a guy who doesn't mind losing a game, right? And so
Yeah.
if you can play a game of Warhammer and you're okay losing, then you could play. You know what I mean? You can start Deepkin as your first army,
Yeah.
right? Because you're gonna get punched a lot before you figure out how to punch back. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But you got to be in a lot of fights to know how to fight, right? I mean, that's kind of like that's how that goes. So if you want to be, you're committed. You like the lore, you like the models. Jump in the water's fine, right? No pun intended, right?
I think there was a pun intended.
But maybe there was, right? But you got to be okay taking those shots, and if you do it, you'll come out on top. I think for sure.
Yeah. They paint up beautifully as well.
Yes.
So
Yeah, they do.
you-
Absolutely. They're very
if-
cool models. I
Yeah.
like them a lot. And I was gonna say, the interesting thing is that you're gonna probably fail a lot, like you said, with it, which is okay. I mean, again, if you're okay losing, you're just gonna learn from it, right, and be better at it. But if you're looking to go out there and see success right away, I don't know if Idoneth Deepkin is the right list for you.
Yeah. It took me a good part of the season to like ramp up and really learn the army.
Yeah.
I went out and did 4-1 at Atlantic City, taking the first time out for tournament. But that was, I think, more of the power of the army. That was, eel spam and all that. And then I went 3-2 the next two tournaments, just trying to find my way with the army. And eventually I settled on a good build and learned what kind of punishment they can take, what they can't. It took me a while to get my hands on the army.
Well, it's funny you say that, right? That you went like 4-1, then 3-2, and then 3-2, right? Like, I think our listeners need to understand that, like, Sergio is a really like good general. Like you've played Legion of Nagash for a really long time, and I don't know. Did you have another army before LON?
No. I mean, I played Death the entire time.
Yeah,
Deepkin was my first non-Death army.
Okay, yeah. So you played Death for a really long time, right? And like you kind of you have understood like Age of Sigmar from the get-go, and so it's funny that you're like, oh, I'm trying to find my way, and I still went 3-2 at like a major. So kind of funny because like I would take like my orcs and go to like an RTT and be like, this is the first time playing this list 0-3, even though like the army should have probably gone at least like 1-2. So that's I think that's more a testament to your generalship of the army, Sergio, that you still like had a bad tournament and went 3-2.
I appreciate that.
Definitely. The first time I met Sergio, I think he was playing his Night Haunt, and he killed me too. So I think I don't remember what I was playing, but that was at Du Bois a couple years ago, right? 3 years ago.
I remember that Du Bois actually. You're right. I didn't even know that we were from
That's
the
how
same
Sergio
area.
meets all of his friends, right? He just beats them at Warhammer first, and then
Something like that. I'll go with that story.
So what kind of combos do you guys find that work well with Idoneth Deepkin? Like, there's some linchpin support characters out there that give you like buffs to rend or extra attacks or something like that. Like, what kind of combos are working right now with IDK?
So I'll throw out one. This is an IDK thing in general, and nobody's doing it. So write it down, right? And that is and it doesn't have to be just a Deepkin army, but you take the Shark with the net launcher as an ally unit. And remember, the Shark has a rule that if he hits, you don't get to pile in. So you can do Unleash Hell as a Shark, as an ally in like, a Stormcast army, for example. and it keeps your opponent from piling in on your dragons. I didn't say that out loud, but
Wow.
really, really strong. For an anti-charge, right, for an opponent in another army as an ally unit, the Alapexes you still got to roll, right? It's going to be on a 4+, right, because it's -1 for the charge, right?
Yeah.
But there's lots of things that you could do to fix that too, right? By having like a Hurricanum nearby, or depending on the army you're playing with, right? You can make that even better too potentially. But on a 4+, knowing your opponent can't pile in, right, it can be potentially a huge thing. And the unit on its own is really good. So it isn't like it's a waste of points if you don't get the 4+. It's still an amazing unit. So I think.
Yeah, it's the shark version of the Sloppity Bile Bopper or whatever that Nurgle unit's name is, right?
Right. But it also shoots, it also bites, it has rend, right? It can move 14 inches, it's got 8 wounds and a 4-up save, right? It's a really good unit, but actually no, it has 10 wounds now, right? With the update.
Yep.
So
imagine dropping some of those Stormcast Annihilators, right? That are just like tanky dudes that can deliver a hit, but they don't move for crap, right? But you drop those onto an objective, and you drop that shark near them, or you have him move basically across the board near them.
He can move 14 and
exactly.
He can run, right?
Yeah.
Because the shot you're worried about, right, is going to be when they charge you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like.
Yep. So you drop them near them, and like all of a sudden, like that objective's not going anywhere.
Right. So it's so I mean that's one unit I think that it's a combo on its own. It really is.
Yeah.
And you can play it smart like that in Deepkin, and a lot of people are excited about the Alapex, and rightfully so, because the harpoon shots got so much better, right? But I think the net, having 1 or 2 nets in your army. As a Deepkin player is a really, really good idea. 1 is probably enough, but having it in an ally army is really great as well. So there you go. There's 1.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What about you, Sergio? What combos are you seeing with this army right now?
So are we including the new box that just came out or not?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So the new box that just came out, so we're in between rules right now. We have the old book, the new box set rules, and we know a new book is coming out in 2 weeks. But in between this time, a friend I know, John Anderson, has podiumed twice, I think, during this in-between time at 2 separate tournaments. Because basically they've increased Reavers to 170 from 115. So it's a hell of a price jump. Yeah.
Huge jump.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
that's
what
almost
they've done,
double.
Yeah, what they've done is they've made it more reliable. So they've changed it to, before the Reavers had 3 shots at 9-inch range.
Okay.
Now they've condensed it to 2 shots, but it's always 18-inch range at a 3-up, -1 rend, 1 damage.
Wow.
So right now in Idoneth, if you include an Eidolon of the Storm, it's an 18-inch bubble of +1 to wound. That's combat and shooting. So that's the Reavers are on 3s and 2s now.
That +1 to wound is stupid powerful.
Oh, it's incredible, especially with a unit like Sharks, who are, 3s and 2s, and then in Futhane re-rolling 1s to wound as well.
Yep.
And so then you're at 3s and 2s with the Reavers, 2 shots a piece. And then you include a turtle, so you don't have to spend a CP, and the turtle gives a 12-inch bubble of +1 to hit. So the Reavers in the Futhane Enclave right now are 2s or only 1s, and 2s, -1 rend, 1 damage. And so they're just putting out tons of quality. I mean, it's guaranteed damage. You can just math out exactly how much damage you're going to do to whichever unit you pick at 18-inch range. And so the turtle plus the Eidolon are giving that buff to thralls, which also got a huge buff that with the 2-inch range now, and sharks and anything else that you include in the army. So I think these in between rules right now are pretty bonkers. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves with the the topics, but I don't see how the Idoneth book can get any better than it currently is right now. Because right now you are stopping shooting with Forgotten Nightmares.
Right.
You are striking first. You are getting shooting at 18-inch range that are on 2s and 2s. Combat that's at 2s and 2s. Yeah, like you just, I don't. Besides mortal wounds, there's nothing that the army lacks.
And remember the way, because I think you're right in that this between books is very dangerous. Because right now, if you're playing all the rule sets, right, you also get to run and shoot turns 1, 3, and 5,
Yep.
right? Which means those reavers, it's not 18-inch range, right? Their base movement is 8, right? So that's talking 26-inch range.
Oh my gosh.
And they can run, right? So technically, it's 32-inch range, turns 1, 3, and 5.
Yep.
Right, so,
Yeah.
Now, having said that, right, we haven't seen what the new War Scrolls, the new the clans, the sub-allegiances are going to be, right? So turns 1, 3, and 5 might not be run and shoot anymore, right? We don't know what they're going to change the new book to, so... Currently, you can have it all. If they let you play everything, you can have it all. You can have everything you've ever wanted with Deepkin for 2 more weeks.
2 more weeks,
right?
Yep. Maybe longer if the FAQ.
Roxy's going crazy, Lincoln.
That's my hound dog, bro.
Oh, so let's you guys kind of brought it up, and I think I'm listening to you guys talk about the abilities of Idoneth Deepkin, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, how are they not winning more tournaments right now? And do you think it's because not a lot of people play them? Because I don't see a lot of IDK lists out there when you look at. I mean, you're seeing like tons of Stormcast right now. You're seeing a bunch of Orcs. You're seeing a bunch of Soulblight Grave Lords. You're seeing kind of like some of these bigger meta armies, but IDK, man, right now, would you consider IDK S tier right now or A tier?
I'd say high B.
Yeah.
High B?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
I would say they're like an 8 out of 10.
Yep.
Okay.
I think that you can play them and you can beat an S tier army.
Yeah.
I do think it's absolutely possible. But I could just go down, you can't go to your local hobby shop, find some guy playing Deepkin and expect him to win his games, because that's just not going to happen.
Right.
Right. Sergio's put in a lot of game time, right, to be able to play and win with Deepkin all the time, right? Sergio wins with Deepkin almost all of the time.
Yeah.
And he's put in, I'm going to ask you how many games he's played, but he's put in lots and lots of games of Deepkin, dialing in his specific list, right, so that he can win. It's something you definitely got to work for, man. You definitely got to work for it. But I do think that with the new book, pun intended here, they're going to ride the wave of the new army, right? They're going to flavor of the month, right? They're going to get their time in the sun for sure.
So, I mean, I guess this goes back to the glass cannon thing, right? Where it's really easy to deal out the damage, but it's not easy to take the damage. And so if you're not a solid general understanding that fact, you're going to take a lot of punishment. Right. You'll deal it out in turns 1 and a little bit, but if you're not careful, like you could be tabled like in round 3.
Right. I mean, what's the armor save of a Reaver?
5.
5 up.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there ain't no after save, folks. There's no ward save here, right?
Yeah.
So, Sergio, of your army list, how many of those models in your army have a 5 up armor save?
I'd say 75% of my army.
Ooh.
Right.
Yeah.
75% of his army is rolling with t-shirts on, right? I mean, It's like, a t-shirt, I guess, is a 6 up save, but they've got a 5 up save. Nearly all of his army is a 5 up save, so you have to play it right. You have to be able to control your charges. You need to be redeploying. You got to have stuff out in front that can take the hit, so the guys behind him can do the shots, right? I mean, it takes a lot of playing to get it right.
Yeah.
All right, so before we talk about the book coming out, what is your favorite model of this range? What's Roxy's favorite model?
I'll go first since Lick is going to take care of that. Man, this is a hard choice because the turtle was a lot of fun to paint.
Yeah.
I found a good tutorial online. I followed that tutorial to the T, and it came out great. The Eidolon is great. The army just paints up great. I'm not going to lie.
It does. It looks really cool.
Even like I had to do 50 Reavers. I hate doing hordes. I've done hordes all throughout AOS with, legions and a gash, but I did it. And, but this is an old line in Age of Sigmar, one of the original lines. And the Reavers and the Thralls look excellent. Like they have such dynamic poses. So I don't know. The whole line looks great to me. I'd probably say the Eidolon or the Turtle though.
Okay, it's interesting because I didn't realize that it was that old. I thought it was like a mid 2.0 army. I didn't realize that it was one of the originals.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know. I remember it's been out since like, I gotta say like 2017. I think it's a really old book.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Lincoln? What's your favorite model in the range?
My favorite model. Come on now. It's got to be Lotan, ladies. Right? Come on.
The octopus.
No. He's got an octopus, man. Come on. No. I'm only half kidding. I actually really do like that model. And like he's 75 points, and he's worth it if you need a character. He's got a built-in 5-up board save, right? And reroll 1s. He's a good guy. Nobody plays with him, but I'm a proponent of bad things, right? I said that before. I think he's pretty good. I like the sharks. I kind of built my army around the sharks, right? Yeah. I mean, I get to play a friggin' shark in Warhammer. How cool is that, right?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I'd rather play sharks than dinosaurs. Sorry, Seraphon players.
Right, yeah, get out of here.
Right. That is a line that has not aged well.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, seriously. Although, have you seen the like Underworld models for the Seraphon?
No.
Like, oh man, they look amazing. Like, and I mean that's all like Underworld stuff, right? With the custom sculpts, like the skeletons looked amazing, and
that whole line I think is gonna hopefully someday get revamped. I mean, I was listening to Honest Wargamer over the weekend, and I think he said that you're better off making a salamander out of clay than you are buying GW's ugly sculpts, right? Something like that, because they're so terrible.
They look so bad.
I'm a huge proponent of 3D printing as well. So there's a lot of good lizardman sculpts out there.
Yeah, totally. All right, so let's talk about the book. So the book is up for pre-order this next Sunday, right? And that means that you'll have it in your fleshy little hands the Saturday after. So we're looking at about 2 weeks from where we're recording this. What is your wish list for this book? And then we'll get to like what your greatest fears of what may be in this book will be. So what's your wish list right now? What do you want to see in there?
So if I could wish whatever I want,
yeah,
we'd have some kind of crab unit, man, like crab cavalry or crab warriors, something else besides sharks and eels.
They did have the one crab in the Underworld models, right? That they had like the Dune Claw is what it was called.
Yeah, he was voted second best model of the year, I think.
Yeah. Everybody's like, a crab? That's amazing.
Yep.
Would be sweet is like if you had a crab, like a crab unit, like their movement was terrible, but if you put them on an objective, they could like get like instant like extra save if they dug in, they buried in or something like that, you know, and they could
like some kind of teleport or something as well. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome. Like they could dig into the sand and then pop up somewhere else.
Yep. I don't know. There's just so many cool sea monster ideas they could go with, you know, like, and then they haven't even explored, you know, sea peoples, you know, besides, I mean, they're all elves, but like mer people or fish people or something like that, you know? I don't know.
So do you think that they're going to come out with some more models? They haven't teased any models, so I'm not thinking that they're going to come out with any new, like, models as part of the book release or anything like that, right?
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah. So, like, in terms of, like abilities or, you know, sub-faction abilities or things like that, like, what would you like to see? I know earlier you said, for example, Sergio, like, a big thing that's lacking in the army is the ability to do mortal wounds.
Yeah, actually, yeah. A consistent way to do mortal wounds would really round out the army. I don't see always strikes first going into the next book. I think that's going to get the boot. But I just pray that the Forgotten Nightmares rule will stay. As long as that stays, then the army like keeps some of its soul from the previous iteration.
Yep.
So if they get rid of that, like how bad does your list kind of fall apart right now, Sergio?
I don't know if it falls apart, but it just succumbs to the normal things that every other list does. So you
Yeah.
know, your heroes get picked off by long strikes. Your things can split their attacks into you. Like that's the most powerful thing about Deepkin is that if your opponent's army has 1 unit of sentinels, 30 sentinels,
Yeah.
that sentinels can only kill 5 units in the entire game. They're just limited to killing 1 unit per shooting phase. So
Right.
they're on a time. They're on a ticking time, and so unless the opponent army has tons or multiple different shooting units, then they're just so limited. It's incredibly powerful. That particular rule it's awesome.
So
Yeah,
with that, yeah, go ahead, Lincoln.
I
Sorry.
say I played against a Sentinel list at Summer Slaughter and just housed it because I fed it 1 shark, and then the rest of the sharks shot that unit on my turn and then charged it, and it was over. I mean, it's a really good anti-shooting army.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Joe, I don't know, but I think Joe must have told you as well, Lincoln. But he said you were the hardest. That's the tournament. Summer Slaughter was the tournament that Joe Cryer went 5-0 with the Fox list.
Yep.
And he said you were his hardest game
Yeah, for sure.
out of the whole time. And that was the first time you had brought out in 3.0, right? That was the first tournament you had done for 3.0?
Right, that was my very first 3.0 tournament ever, and I took sharks, right, which I'd been metaing my own meta, right, for a long time, but
Yeah.
actually putting it on the table and playing it the first time in 3.0 was that tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great list.
So what about you, Lincoln? Do you think that they're going to get rid of the always strikes first? I mean, I guess does that mean,
So
Sergio, that they're going to get rid of the whole tides thing?
I think they're going to give us new tides.
Yeah.
I think they're going to mix it up. Because the army, so let's talk about, like, why do the tides exist, okay? Right? Why is there an always strikes first tide? And I think it's an answer to the glass hammer, right? When you have an army, like I said, you can't handle being punched back. You've got to give them the ability to deal with that problem that they've got, that weakness that they have. And I think the always strike first round, which is the high tide, I think that is why it's in there. So I think that will still be there. It'll probably be called high tide, but it might be in a different order, right? And right now with Futhin and the flipping the tides around with the Tidecaster, I actually expect that all of that's probably going to go away. I think they're just going to change it. I think it's going to be very different. Right now, all Deepkin players rely on those tides being in the order that they're in. And or they rely on the fact that you can flip the tides and play them backwards. Almost all competitive Deepkin players are playing that way right now. But that's also the only reason that the Tidecaster is even taken in an army. Right, Sergio?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Which is one thing I want to add in there that I wish, right? These are Teclis's babies, and where the hell's the magic, right? Like, that's what they could be adding to this, is some amazing magic ability in the army to give them magic. Because right now, you've got the Eidolon who can cast, and he's not that amazing, right? And then you've got the Tidecaster, who, other than having a lot of wounds, if I give her the right command trait, also isn't that great. So I think a seahorse casting unit or something like that, or something. There's a lot of things they can do. The fact that these are the children of Teclis and they haven't passed Harry Potter school, class 1.
Well, maybe
funny.
because they have no souls, they're just muggles like the rest of us.
That's something, right?
Yeah.
Speak
Yeah.
for yourself, Justin. Speak for yourself.
Oh, dang it. Oh, no. That's awesome.
So good.
Yeah, well, listen, I will say this, and kind of in closing of our Idoneth Deepkin chat, the army is beautiful, the models are amazing. If you're thinking about getting Idoneth Deepkin and investing heavily into models, please wait 2 weeks until the book comes out, and then you can kind of go from there and see how things are, because there might be some points increases, there might be some points decreases. It would be interesting to see if the Eagles drop down 20 points, like you mentioned earlier, to maybe right level that, and see some of these other ones go up again in points. Although I wouldn't be too shocked to see if the points stayed roughly around where they are, because they just did get a big update in those points too, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll
I
see.
think
Okay.
rerolls are definitely gone.
Oh,
well.
you think so, huh?
I
Yeah,
think
I
there's
mean,
gonna
they
be a
just
lot of things gone. Yeah.
yeah, they have rerolls galore right now, and that's just not a thing of 3.0. And so,
You're
and
yeah. Now, one thing in 3.0 is like, what is the turtle the only monster that IDK has?
yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless
So-
you're casting one with your awesome not so casting army,
Right.
you're not gonna have more than one monster.
Exactly. So,
Yep.
have you found that that's kind of a hindrance, like in terms of like playing in these, Realm of Gur tournaments that we're currently in right now?
honestly, the turtle is so good that I'm not going to complain about not having multiple monsters. It's not cheap, but it's not expensive either, and it does damage. It buffs you everything, and it gets you monster points. So I can't complain.
And it's hard to kill.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's tough. Yep.
And today, right in Gur, having a monster on the table for you is often a risk.
Yeah,
Right?
it can be a liability.
It's 3 points, right? Yeah, liability. And the turtle is one of those monsters I feel that is not a liability.
Oh,
Yep.
very good.
So
Yeah, very good. Very good. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for giving us some breakdown on Idoneth Deepkin. I'm excited to see what the new book brings us. We did see that in the roadmap of Age of Sigmar, there's 2 mystery books that are planning to come out. Well, before that, we're going to have a Night Haunt, and what was the other book that they announced?
I think Daughters of Cain as well are getting an update.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, Daughters of Cain and Night Haunt book. I'm really excited about Night Haunt. But we got 2 mystery books coming out. What is your guys' speculation of those 2 mystery books?
well, they just did the Beastman, like the stealth Beastman update,
They did.
So-
I thought it was going to be Beasts of Chaos, but I saw that White Dwarf like update,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, there goes that idea.
Yeah. So I don't think that would be one of the mysteries, right? Because where's the mystery in that? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely think it's gonna be a Chaos army.
Okay.
And probably an undead army. That's my guess. So the Chaos, I would say, who needs a new book?
Corn.
Blood for the Blood God, exactly. I think Khorne is the Chaos army that's other than Beasts of Chaos. Okay.
Right.
I think they're actually the most due for a book, but this new update they've given them makes it pretty competitive, I guess.
Yep.
So maybe it's enough. But Khorne is in desperate need of a new book, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the update to the Beasts of Chaos and White Dwarf made them from like F tier to D tier. Like I don't know, it's like there's some good updates in there, but like I
don't know.
I
I'm
think-
hearing some scary lists coming
Yeah,
out
you
of
can
the.
make some really, really.
Is it with the
scary
Doom
lists.
Balls out there? Is that what it
It's
and the
it's a
Dragon
little bit
Ogres?
of the Doom Bulls, the Dragon Ogres, the what are their mid range melee fighters, the Bestigors as well.
Oh yeah.
I mean that army now has summoning, ambush, the Herdstone, and Rend galore. Rend galore. Yep.
I mean, we're
Yeah,
talking about Gores with Ren 2, right, on
Yep.
turn 3, man. I'm not, right, again, I haven't played them yet. I don't even own the army, believe it or not. I have almost every other army. But the fact that you can hide your Gores until turn 3, and then just throw them away and destroy your enemy, is pretty funny. You know what I mean? Just hold back, and then just release them. And
Yeah.
it's just it's just going to be a lawnmower, man.
That'd be interesting. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, is it the Doom Bulls or the Dragon Ogres that count as monsters? I think it might be the Doom Bulls.
Yeah. I don't know. I have
I'm
to
not sure
double
about
check.
that. They have plenty
Yeah.
of them, so.
Yeah. I heard Skaven. That was Matt Barker's.
Oh, you're right.
for the
Skaven
Chaos
are.
book.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they made a weird reference that was
The
I forgot what it
Mischief,
was
right? It
The
was
mischief,
Mischief.
yeah. The Mischief is a group of rats, is what it's called.
Yep.
Okay.
And so if there's somebody clever at GW, and I'm not sure that there is anybody with a clever vocabulary.
They
at
sometimes
GW,
like to get pretty cute with themselves,
right?
though.
Yeah. So if that's the case, it could be Skaven. And Skaven's probably due for a book, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, right? They got rid of slaves altogether.
Yeah.
Somebody told me it's not because they're being politically correct. It's just because Skaven don't really need 2 crappy combat units, right? So that's why there's
Yeah.
just clan rats.
Right.
So they could use some love. They need something besides a great shooting unit and a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much what they have right now. So.
Well, The storm vermin are not bad. They're just too expensive for what they are.
Right.
Mhm.
So, yeah, they need some adjustments. For the order, I'm thinking that it's a new army, and my listeners are probably like, "Oh my God, he keeps going on about that."
What?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the like Malarian's Dark Elves.
Yes, I know that's coming, but I thought that wasn't coming until later because they accidentally leaked that, right? I think that's
Yeah,
coming.
I think they said 23, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
is
that's
that when
the-
it's
yeah, I
coming?
think
Okay,
that's gonna be
all
next
right,
year,
all right.
yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then what order army do you think is going to be?
Chaos
Good.
Dwarves.
Chaos Dwarf? What?
Chaos Dwarves. They have been teasing Chaos Dwarves in the lore in every single book that you like, and any map that you look at, they always show the little Chaos Dwarf fortress in the middle of the ocean in multiple realms and in multiple books, multiple
Yeah.
lores. Right? It's everywhere. I'm banking on it.
That's funny.
Matt thought Sylvaneth for the Order book, and that sounds decent to me because they're struggling a little bit right now.
You know what? I love Matt, and I think it's going to be Daughters of Cain. I think that's going to be the order
Well-
book. I think right now Daughters have the Marathi bow snakes,
Yeah.
and like that's pretty much it, right? They're not doing a whole lot. They're a very dynamic army, right? They can be played very well a lot of different ways, but competitively right now, everybody's playing them the same way.
Yeah. The bow snakes, right?
Yep.
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 Yeah. So.
So
Yep. Well, we shall see as we get a little bit closer. I told you guys that obviously I play Night Haunt, so I'm excited for that. I wonder though if with the Night Haunt release we're gonna get a new season. That will kick off a new season, and my theory behind that is that Night Hunt has no monsters in their army. Right, like the only monster is the Forge World Mourngul that they have. Like the Black Coach is not a monster.
right.
Like they have literally no monsters in their army, and
They're
so
almost like Deepkin.
yeah, and so the only way I think for them to be like relevant is to change the season, and maybe it's like an Olgu type of like realm next or something like that, right? And some of their abilities will like shine in the new season. So
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
For me, that's like the big hanging question at the moment is we're in Gur, right? We were kind of told that they're going to be changing realms, I think, every year, right? Something to that effect. And they're releasing all these new monster abilities, right? Like they just made freaking Dragon's Battle Line. And they're talking about monsters being amazing in Beasts of Chaos now. And they're talking about monsters being, monster. Why would you be doing that a month before you change the realm, right? I don't know.
Well, look,
But-
I think that would be kind of hilarious and in keeping with them like teasing Beasts of Chaos. Like, here you go, Beasts of Chaos are gonna be awesome for literally 3 weeks. Like,
Right. So,
like oh,
my guess is that they're going to... There's a huge play for monsters. Everybody's playing monsters in their list. It's like Monster Mash, right, everywhere because of the bonus points. And like I said, the liability, but usually the bonus points are worth the liability. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a new realm, pick it, the bonus is not going to be monsters, and all these monster lists. They can still go and win all their games, but at the end of the day, they're going to be down like 5 or 6 points in the tournament because that's no longer going to be the bonus.
right.
An all dragon army isn't going to be viable if you want to get max points in a tournament.
Yeah.
So
Sounds
I think
about right.
that it's going to be maybe battle line units or not even that because dragons can do that at the moment.
It could
Maybe
probably
it's
be
gonna
like a magic user or something like that, right?
Or it could be a unit that has a banner, a unit that carries a banner, right? Who knows what it's going to be? It's going to be something that will exclude monsters, I think.
Artillery. The season of artillery.
Right.
Will be in the realm
there you
of
go.
the realm of metal.
It's not a bad idea. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, GW obviously hasn't told us how long these seasons are going to last for, but we're coming up on a year in a couple of months.
I thought they had said that it would change from General's Handbook to General's Handbook.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought
there
too.
it is. Okay,
Which
all
I think
right.
is amazing. It keeps it so fresh.
I think it's a great idea, and then that way you don't have to worry about having to switch out editions every 2 or 3 years, right?
Yep.
I think it's a really great idea. All the 40K players that I talk to, they all think it's such a great idea that 40K should have something like that.
Yeah.
Like they've got their chapter approved, but it doesn't change the whole state of the game.
And they could easily do it in 40K where they're just like, okay, we're going to focus on like Octaria sector. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or some of these different ones, and there's different bonuses that happen in each of those different sectors or whatever. So that'd be cool. All right, well let's thank you guys for running us through the Idoneth Deepkin. I think it's always fun to talk about armies that you don't see a lot of times on the table. And sometimes when you do see them, you can get a little surprised. You're like, okay, what does this army do? All right, well, we're going to find out real quick.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to have a little bit of foreknowledge going into it, especially if you find yourself on a Best Coast pairing app against Lincoln or Sergio. Good luck. Have fun. And, hide your kids, hide your wife. So, do what you can. Our main topic is kind of an extension off of the Idoneth Deepkin topic, and it's about list building. And I asked you guys to come on because I think you two approach list building very differently, but then you have some commonalities in it. And I want to talk about list building in general, and then kind of work into like how is list building different in 3.0 than 2.0. So let's start general stuff. Sergio, let's start with you. How do you, when you go to build a list, let's say you were going to start a new army. Let's say you were going to start a Stormcast army. What would you do to look at building a list? Like, how do you approach that?
I think you have to have something that can crack high armor.
Okay.
The game is currently themed around monsters, like we were just talking about. So and those typically come with high armor saves, a ward save, but you're only talking about 18 wounds, and so you need something that can crack high armor. In 3.0, you don't need hordes. Having hordes was a big thing in 2.0, with swamping the objectives, but with giants being a big thing now. Stormcast with Stormkeep being able to count as more models, Beastclaw Raiders count as more models. Hordes just I don't know, they just don't hold as much weight as they used to. So I think to start off, you have to find. I don't know. I guess you have to kind of decide how do you want to approach the game? Do you want to hold objectives? Do you want to kill things?
Yeah.
I think you have to start from there.
So you would say your gameplay. You need to figure out what your gameplay is, and then kind of work into your list from there, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, people will say that Age of Sigmar is an objectives-based game. They're not wrong, right? And I remember one of the big things learning when I was first starting was that I needed to play the objective, not my opponent, in a sense, right? Meaning that I don't need to go out and kill all of his models. I don't need to go out and kind of, just smash into his army, unless I'm probably orcs or whatever. But, like, I really need to play the objectives, right? And I think that's what helped me be successful playing Night Hunt when they weren't very good in the meta. I still said, okay, I'm going to play the objective. And so I decided that I was going to really hone in on what they were good at, which was their movement, right? And their ability to get to where they needed to go. And so that, I realized, okay, they're not a melee army. I shouldn't try to force them to be a melee army. So it sounds like you're saying you should play the objectives, but like how you play them shapes the way that you approach your list.
Yeah, I think backing up, I think the way that I look at it is that I think the meta shapes how you build your list. Specifically, if we're talking about tournaments, or I guess local metas is the same thing as well. If you're just playing with your friends, you still have that local meta between all of you guys. I think that's what should shape a list to begin with, because let's say you're trying to play, Sylvaneth, and so you're trying to look into the Sylvaneth's strengths and weaknesses, and so then you start going into the Sylvaneth strengths, and then you find out that the Sylvaneth strengths doesn't get anywhere with the meta that's going on around you. you're just out of luck. And so I think that's where I start off looking like, what am I most likely to face, and how can I beat that with the tools that whatever particular army I'm playing with has.
Okay.
I think that's where I start the list
So the
building.
meta, the question of the meta is what drives your basic questions in list building, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And let's be honest, your meta isn't just a local thing. Like you're talking national tournaments, right? Like what's the meta at LVO? And so I guess you could say that your meta right now, Sergio, is like the North American meta, right? Because
Yeah.
it's different than like Europe or Australia or something like that.
Yeah.
So, what about you, Lincoln? How do you approach list building?
So, it's funny. I don't mean to be. I'll tell you what. Meta be damned. I go for 3 or 4 threats, and I try to dominate a phase. Right, 3 to 4 threats and dominate a phase. If I can dominate, let's say Deepkin for example, if I can dominate the shooting phase, if that belongs to me in the game, then I think that's a phase that my opponent's probably not going to be playing in. Especially with Deepkin, just an example, right? I'm going to out shooting phase the shooting army. So if I can dominate a phase and have 3 or 4 different threats, I think that's a really well-rounded army to start with, and then just try to outplay my opponent. That's pretty much what I'll do. Like I said, I'll always have at least 3 or 4 threats, things that don't need support per se. They can go off and they can do a thing. I need to have 3 or 4 things that my opponent's got to worry about where they're going and what they're doing, because then I can divide their army apart, and then I get that phase domination for me is kind of key. So I want to be better at whatever I'm doing and whoever I'm playing in at least one of those phases. And that may be the movement phase, right? It may be, the magic phase. It may be a shooting phase. But if I can dominate a phase, it really goes a long way.
That's a very interesting approach. When does that work for every army that you choose? Like, I mean, you said you've got a lot of armies on your shelves, and I've seen them, so I can attest that you have a lot of armies available for you. Like, does that work for a lot of your armies? Being able to be like, okay, I'm going to play ogres right now, and like, if you were to play ogres, like, what phase would you be looking to dominate?
So right now with ogres, I'd be looking to probably dominate. I would be taking Kragnos probably. And I'd be trying to do 3 to 6 charges with impact hits on 4-ups all the way across the board.
So you're dominating the charge and like really the charge phase.
Right.
Charge and melee. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, so this might be a chicken and an egg question here, but does your play style choose your army, or does your army choose your play style?
Definitely army chooses my play style. I mean, I like to punch things, right? But I have a corn army, and then I got a Deepkin army, and they play very differently, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't give up one for the other. One of my favorite armies to play at the moment is my Maggotkin, right? Yeah. And what do? They just outlast, right? They're not super punchy, but you're getting, they're going to outlast you, and they're going to do that drip damage. They're going to get you, but they're not really strong in any phase, I would say. Maybe the Battle Shock phase when your guys all die from disease. But they are just consistently hard to move. So I think all the armies a lot of armies play very differently, and you've got to play that army the way it is played optimally if you want to be successful, especially at tournaments with it.
So you guys are playing a game in a local GW store or your local game store. I come walking in, I'm watching you guys play, and I say, I'm looking for a new army. I want to compete like competitively in a tournament. Where do I start building my list? What would you tell me?
Right. I mean, the right answer for the new guy who's wanting to play, as terrible as it sounds, is probably to start playing Stormcast, because it is the Swiss Army knife of armies. You can really play it any way you want. That's one of the armies that you can play all melee. You can also play it all shooting. You can also play very heavy magic if you want to, especially with the new magic dragons, right? I know not a lot of people are playing them right now, but they're pretty good. I think that's a really. I mean, Stormcast is probably got to be one of the top 3 armies if you're starting the hobby that you should be considering.
But
for sure.
Stormcast has an interesting problem in terms of list building, and they have almost too many choices. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do agree with
Like,
that.
it's way too easy to build a very mediocre Stormcast list.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But I can also build some really kick-ass ones, man.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
So, you know what I mean? Like, so, and the problem I have, I mean, again, I think Stormcast is easy top 3 for a recommendation army.
Oh, yeah.
You can
I
very
agree with
easily make an army that nobody wants to play.
I just wonder, like, if I'm a new player and I come in, right, and I'm watching you guys play, and I say, okay, I want to be able to compete. I've got money in my pocket to burn. Where do I start? I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit with the Stormcast stuff. You say, like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Do you want a shooting army? Do you want a melee army? Do you want a magic army? Like, what kind of army do you want? And then you kind of build from there. So I think playstyle, right, Sergio, you talked about the meta, and so knowing how the meta is right now, for example, in 3.0, if I were a new player and I say I want to compete, what kind of army should I put together? A shooting army, like a melee army? What do you think?
I mean, shooting is always going to be king, especially in AOS. That it's a melee-based game, and shooting just beats melee.
Yeah.
So I'd say, I mean, there's so many variables. So let's just say
There
you
are.
put away the aesthetics. This person just wants to compete. We live in a time where you can just we're going to Google up some net lists for you, and then you can literally pick out of these lists that we know are going to do well, and you can pick which one do you want. Do you want a melee? Do you want a shooting? Do you want tanky? Do you want fast? And then out of the shooting, which aesthetic do you like, and which one can you paint up better? You know what I mean?
Definitely.
It's just with with all the information that we have in Honest Wargamer stats, you can literally guide a new player to a surefire army, and you can tell them, this is going to be hard to pilot, this is going to be easier to pilot, and then that's like, honestly, I'm not like Lincoln. I just can't come up with a bunch of ingenious lists that do a bunch of crazy stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I will take a net list 10 out of 10 times and then mold it into my own after playing it a lot. And so you're going to have two kinds of players. You're going to have one that wants a net list and one that wants to make his own list. But you can always give them a good starting point with a net list. I mean, everyone shares information nowadays, so there's not really who knows who started the very first list. You know what I mean?
That's funny because I think there's a lot of derision about, like, ooh, net list, and I wonder if that comes more from, like, the 40K community than the AOS community, because I remember seeing lists that people posted on Honest Wargamer, on his website, and talking to the person who posted it and being like, dude, tell me how this worked, and they were, like, happy to talk about it, and I was like, oh, that's some interesting ideas, like on how to do it. So I don't know if, like, do you guys think that there's a stigma, like, in Age of Sigmar for using net lists? There is, like, in 40K?
I think it's like an old versus new thing. I'll give it a kind of a comparison to, like, a Diablo build. Right? For those of you that played Diablo, right? Like, if you're playing Diablo, guaranteed you're looking at the latest A tier, S tier builds, right, for your character that you want to build.
Yeah. Right,
because you want to play a character that's going to be optimal, right? So if you're going to go spend your money, right, your hard-earned money on an army, you want it to be optimal, right? It used to be, right, 15 years ago, you'd go to the game store, pick the models you thought looked really cool, and then your buddy would do the same thing, and then he'd beat you. Right, you'd have to go spend more money to buy the models to beat him. Right, you literally used to be. You would only play with half your army, right? And that's what GW loves. And now we've gotten to a place in the gamer community where we're feeding off of each other, and unfortunately, it sells a lot of the same models. Right, you get a lot of the same builds. Right. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think for somebody that wants to get into the hobby, they want to play competitively, they don't want to play and collect and paint for 3 years before they come up with a power list. Yeah. Then it's the way things have to be, and I think it's a good thing, man. I've got more people playing Warhammer now than I can recall for a long time.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a good thing that I think the age of social media has definitely sped up kind of the information sharing, obviously that takes place, and I do think it's a good thing because nobody wants to go out and lose for 2 years,
Right.
and try to figure out and only hear well get good noob, and and go from there, right? Like nobody wants that. And the fact is you can have a net list in the hands of a rookie player, and they could still go 0-3 in an RTT easily.
Absolutely.
Because they just don't know enough about maybe the other armies or other players or tips and tricks and things like that. But they do have the tools that they get there. So all right, let's say that I've been coming to the shop, I've been working out with my thing, and this is where I think both of you shine quite a bit. How do you now squeeze blood out of a stone, right? So I've got a pretty detailed, I've got a pretty good list here, but I've got a full book, and I think that this might have been a little bit easier in 2.0 because of all the different battalions and stuff like that. But we still have a lot of sub factions with armies out there. So how do I find what do you guys do to fine tune your lists? Let's start with that question. What do you do to fine tune your list? And I think that's probably more directed at Sergio. And Lincoln, I've got a different question for you.
So for LVO, I was really trying to fine tune that final list.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier I had tried out 30 Reavers. I had tried out 40 Reavers and 10 Thralls. And then I realized I could just throw the Thralls away and add 10 more Reavers to 50 Reavers that have a screen. I'd have 2 big blocks of shooting. And then I wanted Sharks as well. And so I kept on coming in 10 points over. And so I had to I wanted 4 Sharks. I could fit 2 in 1. And the points in Idoneth are a little bit funky. And so you just always have some weird points. And so I just started looking at allies, and I realized that the new Dracoths that had just come out with from the Stormcast,
yeah,
I couldn't fit in 2 Fulminators, but I could fit in 2 Concussors, which mathed out to be a little bit under 2 Sharks, but it's exactly what I needed. I wanted 4 Sharks. Instead, I ended up with 2 Concussors and 2 Sharks, which to the maths almost equaled 4 Sharks. They almost did the exact same thing. So that was a little bit of the fine-tuning I had to do. I had already had my buffs. I had the whole list in place, basically. I was just getting down to the nitty-gritty. What is the last 250 points am I going to spend on? What's the most I can get out of it? And in the list that I had with 50 Reavers, I had weight of dice. I had the Eidolon, the Turtle, and the Sharks already doing -2 rend, 3, 4, and 2 damage attacks. And so I just needed some mortals, and the Concussors slotted right in for there, because on 6s to hit, they do 2 mortal wounds. Now, they don't have a ton of attacks, and they are a piece that can die, but that's exactly what I needed. A little bit of mortals, some good survivability to be a screen if I need them to, a throwaway unit. They just slotted in perfectly. So that's what I was trying to get down to.
And breath weapon, right? So as you're shooting too. So.
Exactly. Those are more mortals right there too. Yep. So that was the fine tuning I was trying to do for LVO. But Lincoln said it earlier where I wanted multiple threats. Mm-hmm. I wanted different types of damage to be able to handle different types of situations, because Thunder Lizards reduces damage by 1.
Right.
And so they were a bane to dragon lists and to big damage lists. So, but Reavers would mulch them with all that 1 damage attacks.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to punch through high armor with -2 rend and mortals. And so I had 6 different threats in the list, different types of damage: mortals, rend, speed. And then with High Tide, it acts as a defensive ability as well. And so I could position how I wanted to. The list just came together to everything that I needed. So that's how I looked at it.
I remember sitting at home looking at your list on my couch while you were in Las Vegas and thinking to myself, Sergio, that's a really good list, man. Like, really, like it's an excellent deep kit list for serious. It's a really great list.
Yeah, there was no. What's the saying? There was no fat on that.
There's literally no fat on that list. I hope it's as good in 3.0. We'll see, huh?
Yeah,
So,
we'll see.
so when you are coming up, I mean, you are going through the points, right? And you're like, how do I squeeze as much value out of these points? When you're doing that, what kind of value are you looking for? Are you looking for like, I know some people are looking at like wounds per points, right? Like, it's 10 points for one wound, or something. I mean, I'm making numbers up here, but they look at the points per wound. They're looking at the damage per points, like kind of the DPS, I guess, of the model. They're looking at like maybe the movement per points. Like, do you break it down into that kind of math, or are you just kind of looking at how like it complements your army and if you can fit it in points wise? Like, what would you say your guys' approach to that kind of sort of math hammering a little bit is?
I guess one math hammer that I was doing a lot was how much average damage does one unit do toward a 3-up save?
Okay.
And because the 3-up save is just the baseline for everything in AOS 3 now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, 2 sharks in Futhane were doing 13 damage to a 3-up save, and that was just the baseline I was going off of. Concussors were doing like 11. The turtle was doing like 16, and it wasn't a number that I wanted to like a total damage that I wanted to hit, but I just wanted to know how much damage was a unit going to do on average whenever it was coming across the average save.
Right.
As far as damage goes, but you also want to know that these units are all playing their role. You need a screening unit, so and Deepkin has an excellent screening unit in Echelon Guard, but they're 155 points, and it's a screening unit, so it is going to die. So I just figured that I could throw in, one unit of Reavers for 115, and that's going to die as well. And so I didn't see the value in having an Echelon in there.
Right.
So that's just one example of how.
And those Reavers are going to get to shoot +1 hit, +1 to wound when they do get charged.
Exactly.
So
yep. So,
good stuff.
yep.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Lincoln? Are you math hammering this a little bit? Are you how are you approaching it?
It's so funny that I just think that we're more the same than we are different. I'm thinking about what Sergio said, and then when I make my list, right? Honestly, every time I'm over points.
Yeah.
And so when I'm over points, I'm thinking to myself, okay, what can I get rid of and get something that's almost as good, right?
Yeah.
Which is essentially what he was saying when he was going through kind of the sharks for the 2 concussors, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like I'm pretty good at making a great list. And like I said, it's usually like 25 to 30 points over. so then I've got to take that really great list and I've got to figure out how to make it great. I don't want to break it, right? I need to keep it strong. And so then I'll find, like what's right in that sweet spot of not being something I can't live without and not being something that I have to have in my army, So I'll pull it out and I'll put it in something that's almost as good that fills that same role. And hope I'm a few points down so I can get my triumphs, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's I think for me, list building starts with just throwing some ideas together, right? Where I'm like, let's throw, like, if I'm approaching my orcs, for example, I'm like, okay, well, what's a wish list? Let me throw Kragnose, 2 Maw Crushers,
right.
like 3 units of brutes, some pigs in there, and you're like, oh, I'm at 2,800 points here. Okay, you're like, okay, well,
right.
Which one can I drop? And you're like, okay, and so you start to kind of play around a little bit. You're like, oh, 10 Ardboys is not the same as 5 brutes. With the Gorhakas, because like they don't have as good a rend. In fact, the Ardboys don't have any rend anymore, and so you're like, oh wow, like they're just not nearly as good. They may have as many wounds, but their damage output is like been completely nerfed. So you're like, well, what good are these guys when I can have five brutes essentially for the same as like 10 Ardboys, right? So.
Right.
Yeah, so you may be like, okay, well, the Ardboys are a little bit cheaper. They're like 10 to 20 points cheaper, but is that worth it? Because they're like very one-dimensional. Okay, they've got, 10 guys in there with 4 shields that give a 6-up ward. Okay, cool. Like that doesn't really do much compared to 5 brutes that can eat a unit easily. I mean, I had 5 brutes with gore hackers that were taking down those guzzler giants like easily, like just done, like it's gone. And like and because of the smash and bashing, they deleted 3 guzzlers in 1 turn. And the guys playing against was like, what happened to my giants?
They fell over.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Like when you're kind of trying to squeeze out blood from a stone, I think the points have to come in there, right? And you're always looking at that points, and you're like, all right, I'm 10 points over. That's the worst feeling, by the way, don't you think? Like you're like,
Absolutely.
I've got the perfect list, and I'm 10 points over. Like, it happens every time. It doesn't matter what army you play.
Right, I've got my son. He plays 40K, and he's like, Dad, the only thing he doesn't like about Age of Sigmar is the fixed points for the units. He's like, because in 40K I could just take 9 guys instead of 10. It'd be the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, nah, you got to have 10 guys. It costs this much for a unit. And I see, because I played Warhammer Fantasy before, when you could give magic weapons. You could run 11 archers if you wanted to. Regular, you had extra points. Right, and now units come in fixed sizes and fixed points, and I'm a fan, man. I like the new way of doing it. I really do. It's frustrating at times when you're over just a little bit, or under too much, which I've had that too, where I'm under like 80 points, and there's nothing good for 80 points, right? That's worth taking in your list and ruining your battalion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've had all those things happen. I think, generally speaking, take the stuff you know is good and then prune. Versus building from the top up and trying to get to your points. Take the stuff you want, and then prune off the fat.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach. So, let me start from the beginning and see if I get this right. Right, determine what the meta is, right, and what you might be fighting, and figure out what kind of army can counter that, right, so that you could be competitive. From there, determine like what kind of play style you like. Are you a shooter? Are you a movement guy? Like that type of thing. And then from there, look at the models that complement that style, and start to build out a list that's got all the wants and desires in there. Right? You got like the combos, you got the different things, and then see where you end up points wise, and then start to trim it down.
Right.
Is that your guys' approach?
I think that's pretty close. I think that I think what Sergio said about making a list to beat your opponent. He's talking about building a list to counter the meta.
Right. Yes.
None of us believes in list building against your buddy. Right.
Right.
He's bringing, so you bring the oil to his water. Right. Don't do that. Right.
Yeah.
But you should say, I'm going to a tournament. Right. I'm likely to fight high armor save monsters. What can I take in my army to fight against high armor save monsters? I'm not going to make an army list to just play against Tom, right? My friend Tom, right? Because that just going to ruin your hobby and his, right? But I do think that making an army to go against a specific meta, which is what Sergio said, is a great thing to do.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like with your list, Lincoln, you try all different kinds of stuff. I know for myself, for some reason, I'll just be against ideas, and so I won't want to try it. And I can do the math, and I can see the stats on Honest Wargamer, but I just won't like the idea until I put it on the table and I try it for myself. And so I would suggest doing that. If you have a unit that you like, that you think is good, but maybe no one else is running it, try your hand at it. Don't be scared of going outside the box and just trying new things. And then when you're trying new lists, talk to your friend, your opponent as well. Because you don't want them to accidentally bring something that completely counters the thing that you're trying to try out brand new. And then, it just goes horrible and you're like, oh, this was a bad idea. You want...
Right, because of that one data point, right?
You want a fair shot at it. So try different things out. I didn't believe in Reavers until I tried them on the table. I didn't even like the Eidolon until I tried it on the table. And so Yeah, I would suggest just trying as many different things as you can. You can use Tabletop Simulator now if you're into that kind of thing to try different units out, or
Yeah.
just proxy everything. Like I've not encountered a single person for a practice game that won't let you just even bring an empty base of whatever you want to try out. I would suggest trying out everything that you can before purchasing. And there's just too much information out there to make the wrong buy currently for the meta that we're in, or for just the times that we're in. So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
I think you hit on a key point of the list building that I think often goes overlooked, which is the power of your local meta, right? And not just your local meta, but other local players. Because, for example, I honed in on my Night Haunt list that I took to Nova Open that I was actually Las Vegas Open, that I was very happy with, by bringing it to guild gaming and playing against Matt, playing against Nate, playing against Garrett, playing against Jason, and trying out different things and being and asking them, right? Because they're experienced players. What did you think of my list? What worked well, what didn't work well. I've got my ideas, but I kind of want to hear it from you, as an opponent. What was scary for you? What did you think was I don't have to worry about that unit, so I'm going to ignore it. Why, And so that helped me significantly in honing my lists, because I'm getting feedback from other players that even if they don't know my army very well, which they kind of did, but even if they didn't know my army very well, they could just sit down and be yeah, you have this group of 10 chain rafts. I don't care about them. I'm not going to deal with them with the way that you played that, So I think getting that kind of feedback, and you can, like you said, you can do it from your local gaming store. You can get it from Tabletop and Beyond. There's a bunch of AOS people that play all the time on not Tabletop and Beyond, sorry. Tabletop, that's our podcast. Yeah, exactly. On Tabletop Simulator, right? There's a bunch of AOS players on Tabletop Simulator that will play. And, I remember I played against Bill Souza on Tabletop Simulator. And I said, so what do you think of this list? And he's like, yeah, it wasn't very good. I'm like, okay. I'm just trying it out, and it didn't work out so hot. So that's okay. I think it was an orc list that I was playing with, and I got wrecked by him so badly, but it was good. It was good to go through it and then get the feedback, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. I would suggest getting feedback from as many different people as you can as well, because if I'm playing Idoneth and I'm asking the entire group, what do you guys think about this nitty-gritty little pick for Idoneth? Most likely no one else plays Idoneth. And these armies are so specific that you need feedback from someone who's either played against that army or plays the army, So,
right.
And if you don't get any feedback, just speaking to new players, that if you're getting into these chats or into the local scene and stuff, if you drop a list and everyone drops lists and in the chats, and so if you get no feedback, just go on to the next chat, go to the next person, and just keep on asking, and eventually you'll find someone like you two guys or Matt Barker or Nate Trentinelli who won't shut up about feedback that you're getting from these lists back, and you'll find a group. Just find a good group of guys that you can get feedback from. That's I think that's a big part of it. The community is a big part of it as well.
Yeah, and look, there are so many online groups. I'm on a Facebook group with the Auric War Clans and stuff like that, and some of them are people just kind of goofing around a little bit, and some of them are posting their paint jobs that may or may not be good, and some of them are posting lists, and some of the lists are just not good, and some of them are great. And being able to ask the community, saying hey, I'm about to go to a tournament. What do you guys think of this list? I want to try it out at a higher competitive level. And some people are like, okay, well, that combo doesn't work as well as if you did this, or if you split apart this unit into two, then you've got more flexibility, right? Just having that community, I think, is so crucial for building the list. We had a player, our buddy Jesse, I remember he came out and played in his first tournament using Stormcast, and I think he was running just like a bunch of Liberators and maybe a couple of like Evocators, maybe, right? Like it just wasn't like a very good list. Like it was a decent list in early AOS 2.0, but late AOS 2.0 it just wasn't as competitive, right? Like he didn't have any Dracolings, he didn't have any Sequitors or whatever, and so he finished 0-3 at the tournament. He's just like, I don't know what to do, and so like, man, we walked him through a lot of different options, saying like, here's if you want to get competitive with Stormcast, like here are some options for you to do. Now the unfortunate part is he had to go probably get a bunch of new models, but if you wanted to be competitive, like that's kind of where it was at, and it's just having the community is, I think, key part of the list building.
Totally agree.
Lincoln, I want to end on one thing. I told you I had a question before. You come up with some zany lists sometimes, right? Like your all shark list. You had a Nurgle list I think I played against that was a little wonky.
The Stormdrake list.
The 4 Stormdrake list. That was hilarious. Oh man, that was great. But yeah, like you come up with some pretty zany lists. Like how do you get there? Like how?
So I'll tell you what. So I got a funny one right now. Right, check this out. So I take stuff that I love, right, sometimes, and I try to figure out how to break it, right. And so I love a lot of things that people hate. How's that? So I've got this list I've been messing with right now, and I'm getting ready to try it. I call it the Dwarven Slingshot, right? So just stay with me and listen to this, right? It's kind of funny, right? So it's a 2-drop list. I've got Krondis in it, which is a new model, right? That not a lot of people are playing, but he's pretty good. He gets +3 to cast, right? Which is pretty awesome.
Yep.
One of his base spells that comes on his War Scroll is he can pick an enemy unit. I think it's 24 inches away, and he makes them -1 to their save. Okay.
Yep.
When you're +3 to cast, that's probably going to go off. Okay. He also gets 2 spells. So I've also got Soulscream Bridge in my list. I have a Rune Lord that I've given the Arcane Tomb, which he's amazing, by the way, because he gets Arcane Tomb, which means he can cast a spell. He can cast that endless spell if he needs to. He also has a curse, right, that's built in, and he's my general, right? And I've got an Assassin. I've got a Battle Mage. I have 1 unit of 30 Dwarf Hammerers.
Okay.
A unit of 20 Dwarf Hammerers. And another unit of 20 Dwarf Hammerers. Again, I told you the list is called the Dwarven Slingshot. Alright? So the idea here is that I start the magic phase by probably casting with my Rune Lord, Soulscream Bridge. Okay, so he'll take 30 Hammerers and he's going to slingshot them across the table. So they're outside of 9 inches of my opponent. Okay, that's kind of like the core to the list, right? Well, I have a Battle Mage in here. A Battle Mage has a base spell of Wild Form, which gives you +2 to your runs and your charges. Okay, so now I've got these 30 Dwarf Hammerers that are 9 inches away, and they need a 7 to charge you. Okay.
Yep.
Stay with me.
Not impossible,
here,
right?
Stay with me, right?
It's an
With
average
dwarves,
charge. Yep.
hammerers, they have a musician, and that gives them +1 to their charge. So now they need a 6 to charge you. Okay. If I want to just rub salt in the wound, I can take Krondis, who can cast the Realm spell, right? Of what's this? Wings of Fire, which gives an additional +1 to your charge roll.
Oh my gosh.
So now I need a 5 up to charge you with 30 Hammerers. Okay, the Rune Lord on a 2+ can make those Hammers +1 to their rend, which means they're all rend 2. Okay? And then Krondis is going to cast on your unit out in front, whatever it is, -1 to your save. I'm going to charge you with 30 Hammers that all swing through each other. What's going to feel to you like rend 3, right? And all 6s to wound are mortal wounds in addition to the regular damage. Okay? And then again, because we're all about rubbing salt in the wound here, right? My assassin can pop out at the beginning of the combat phase behind the unit, but within an inch, and they can pile in and fight a second time.
Wow. What do you think, Sergio?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. You have a lot of moving parts that have to.
Right. There's a lot of things that gotta go, right?
Yeah,
but here's the thing, right? But even if they don't go, right, I still have Krondus, right, which is +3 to cast.
Yep.
I obviously need the Soul Scream Bridge to go off, but because it's an endless spell and I'm casting it with my Battle Mage, he gets +1 automatically because he's a cities caster, and Bridge goes off I think on a 6, so he needs a 5 to get it to go off, right?
Yep.
So very likely that it's going to be going off turn, and I'm a 2-drop, so there's a good chance I could be going first. Not guaranteed, but good chance that I'm going first. And so if it all worked out right, it would be every turn I'm dispelling and recasting my Soul Scream Bridge potentially, and I'm throwing units of dwarves on your side of the table for literally 3 turns in a row, right? With Krondus also running around and smashing stuff and casting on you.
Yep. What is the armor save of the dwarves?
Dwarves have a 4-up base.
Okay, that's a good armor save.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's nothing left, right? Whatever they're hitting there's nothing left, right? That one unit's going to get 60 attacks. It's going to be hitting on 2s with all-out attack. 2s and 3s at -2 plus -1 to your armor save with 60 attacks, and 6s to wound do mortal wounds. They'll delete a unit of 4 dragons in 1 charge.
Is that the 6s to wound do mortal wounds? Is that like a war scroll ability?
That is a war scroll ability for the hammerers, yeah.
Oh, that's good, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the list, and I think that's another thing that we haven't talked about, is that lists need, to make a good list, it has to have, like, a specific design. Like, you know what this list is meant to do. You're not just hodgepodging a whole bunch of stuff together. You want it to do a particular thing, which is you got bodies to hold objectives. You have one unit you're slingshotting up at a time, and then you have the dragon to go around and flank or, do whatever it needs to do. But you have a specific mission for your, a specific thing your list can accomplish. And I think that's what you got to do with lists. You have to have a game plan and build towards that game plan. And, maybe it's not the best one always, but that's a good place to start,
Right. And then that assassin making them fight, because in order for that assassin to make them fight, they have to be in your opponent's deployment zone, which is so funny because he pops out in the combat phase. So you're going to want to multi-charge, right? 2 units with that unit, but almost everybody into 1 unit and then pile in again a second time, and I think it could be a turn 1 army, which is really funny because you're doing it with dwarves.
An alpha striking turn.
Dwarven slingshot, baby.
Yeah. What gives them the pile-in, the second pile-in attack?
So it's the realm ability for cities for Hammer Hall.
Oh yeah. Nice.
So Sergio, I like your point there a lot about making sure that you know, and I don't know if it's like making sure that your army has an ability. I think it's really like making sure you know what your army does well, right? Like what does it do well, and play into that strength. So if you've built a list around movement, like make sure you're capitalizing on that movement. And Lincoln, I think you really kind of hit home on this before, right? Which is like you want a couple of threats and then to be able to dominate a certain phase. And I think that's kind of where you're getting at, right? Which is like, what does this army do well, and I need to make sure that I at least execute on that, because I think that you can take any army out there, even maybe like the low tier Beasts of Chaos, maybe not so much anymore, but even the low tier Beasts of Chaos, and that like, hey, like this army summons really well. Okay, cool. Well, like maybe make sure that I know how to do that, against my opponents really well to, maximize their ability and get more out, like squeeze more blood from the stone there, right?
Yep. And I mean, the funny thing, right, is that, like I said, I love it, take what I like and I try to break it, right? Like, I can make a better version of this list that, like, throws a Stormcast unit instead of hammerers, right? But in this case, I get to play something that people think are terrible.
Yeah.
Right? And hopefully one turn them. It could be awesome.
You know what's so funny is I guarantee you that if you went to the tournament with, I would say like 90% of the players there would see your list and just be like, okay, this is gonna be an easy game.
Right.
You
That's
know?
my favorite kind of Warhammer, I'll say it again, is to take something that everybody hates and then, they think it's terrible and then beat them with it. That's the best thing, man. It's my favorite thing.
Lincoln is very anti-meta.
I love anti-meta stuff. Like,
Yeah.
It works though. Like, you're gonna run into the meta a lot, but then, I mean, there's out of a pool of 170 players at like LVO.
right.
You're gonna see people don't know what you're gonna do, and you're gonna have an advantage with them. Like, just on that. I don't know, anti-meta works just as well as playing into the meta.
Right,
Yeah.
For sure. I agree 100%.
Well, it's because how often have they seen those units? Like, do they even know their war scrolls? Like, do they,
Right.
they're like, I don't know what
What
to
are
do
hammers?
with this, Yeah, exactly. And like those were always the worst games for me at the tournament. I remember, we didn't have a lot of Seraphon in our meta, our local meta, right?
Right.
And so when I went to LVO, I faced Seraphon for the first time. I got wrecked. Like I did, and like the player who was playing, like he'd been playing Seraphon for a long time, so like he really knew how to like maximize his army, and so I'm just like I don't know what to do here. I don't know what his counters are. I don't know like anything about that, and so I didn't do good. And to this day, like I just don't do well against Seraphon. Like it's so stupid. I should do just fine against them, but I don't do well because I think I've like got it in my head about like, oh man, like they wrecked me that one time and they're really good and I don't know. And I don't think they're actually that good, but like.
Right. Well, like, when I made it, right, I was thinking, I want something that can go against heavy armor, it can kill monsters, right?
Yeah.
Like that unit, even without all the buffs, with the 2 Rend plus 1 more for the armor save, right? Is
Yep.
going to kill giants in 1 charge easily, right? And there's not a lot of things in the game right now that can kill a Gargant in 1 turn.
Yeah, right.
Right. And this list will absolutely kill a Gargant in 1 turn. If I double turn him, game's over on turn 2.
Yeah.
Like, it's over.
Very good.
Fun stuff, man. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I like those funny lists, man. I like them.
Well, I encourage our listeners to like go out and just have some fun. I mean, that's one of the best things I think about Age of Sigmar is that War Scroll Builder. When you guys are building lists, do you use the Warhammer app or the War Scroll Builder?
I use the Warhammer app.
Yeah, I do too now.
I do too now. I think it's just much easier visually to see it, right? I think the war with like the way that reinforcements and stuff works,
Yep.
the War Scroll Builder app like just isn't as useful as it used to be.
Yep. I do the AOS reminders. I'll take that a lot of time, especially when I'm learning an army. I'll go on AOS reminders and I'll put in the units and all the the abilities. And then my first game, like playing my Maggotkin, I went through I'm playing with my opponent. I'm going down through the pages, making sure that I don't forget anything. And now on my 3rd or 4th game, I still printed it out and took it with me, but I didn't look at it one time, right?
Right.
For the I mean, maybe as a reminder every now and then, but for the most part, I'm not playing with it anymore. But I think AOS reminders is fantastic.
It really is.
With your list builder. It's great.
Yeah, it really is. That definitely helped me early on when I was starting to play like a 2,000 point army. Like when you're playing a 500 point army, like it's kind of easy to remember what you're doing, right? But when you got a lot of moving pieces, like it's hard to remember everything. So the AOS reminders is a fantastic thing. So anyway,
I will say that the War Scroll Builder, I do use the app more now because like I said, like you said, I like seeing the list and But the War Scroll Builder definitely has the best output as far as like the list. And because the Warhammer app just doesn't even give you the option to put certain abilities that you need to pick from. And War Scroll Builder also gets updated way more frequently than the app does as well. Still to this day. And so it definitely has its uses. I do like the app better though.
I know the app did fix its output, right? Like the first time I did an output with the app, I was like, what am I looking at? And it was so funny because I shared it to Matt Barker, right? And I hit it and I'm like, I am so sorry. Like when I put it into the chat, because I'm like, I don't even know what this is, like it doesn't even make any sense. And so it's gotten a lot better, but I think you're right, Sergio. Like there's still some lagging bugs with the app that make it a little difficult to pick it out. Like I know, like I think the Arcane Tome doesn't let you choose out the spell or something like that.
Yep.
For Stormcast, you can't pick if you're a Scions or Stormkeep. Just little details like that,
It's got bugs. And the other thing is, once you make a list, you can't go back and change the subfaction.
Oh man, that is so annoying.
It's really annoying because I got to go make another version of it. You know what I mean? And sometimes I'm going through it and I want to figure out which one I want, or I want to make a version 2 of it. There's no way to duplicate your list, right? To make a second copy of it. It's not perfect, but I really do go back and forth. I use the reference a lot to go look at my for other armies, especially when I'm playing somebody new, like at the shop or something. I'll go and I'll look and see what are the battle traits in their army, and a lot of times I'm reminding them about what they can be doing.
Yeah.
Because I have access to everything. So I think the AOS app is actually Stormforge is really good, man.
I think out of the gate, AOS app was better success than the 40K app.
For sure.
That 48 cap, I think, really tripped out of the gate. I think AOS may have stumbled a little bit because it wasn't like 100% ready, but I think that it's gotten much better and it's much easier to use. So
I still use Battlescribe for 40K.
Definitely. So, well, thank you guys for jumping on this podcast with me. It was great to have you here. And Sergio, you raised your hand. Do you have a question?
No, I was just trying out the button.
Well, I'm glad you joined us tonight, Sergio. It's been a while since I talked to you. Lincoln was here until he just left, so I don't know what happened to him, but
shows up late, leaves early.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe his dog started barking again, So, but thank you for joining us, everybody. Thank you for listening to us. We love putting out this Warhammer stuff. If there is something that you would like to hear from us or someone who we'd like to hear from, we would love to go out and find that guest, bring them on, and talk about some of the topics. So find us on Facebook. We're, facebook.com/tabletop and beyond. We're on Twitter, too, at Tabletop and Beyond. Instagram as well. And we also have our website at tabletopandbeyond.com. So leave us a message, like us, give us a comment, share it with us. We definitely want to put out content that you guys are interested in and get great guests on like Sergio and Lincoln. So thank you again, Sergio, for jumping on with us.
Thank you for having me, and Lincoln too. Maybe we can reconvene after the new book drops and we can talk about it all over again, since the first half will be irrelevant in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think if it's anything like the Oryx book, right, like some things changed, but a lot of the army still kind of stayed the same.
Right.
So they just made it more 3.0-y.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see, and we're going to need to reconvene and go through some stuff. So
cool.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who's listening, and y'all have a good night.